Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the CR Sports Podcast. And Garrett, we're going to be a little bit more consistent now. The NBA Finals started tonight, as it is June 6th on a Thursday. It was a big layoff for the NBA. It felt like, I was ready for the NBA to go straight into the finals. Then, we had a little bit of a wait, but it's okay. And the Celtics just looked spectacular tonight on their home floor.
Yeah, I think it was 9 days off for the Celtics, which is pretty insane, especially once you get to this point in the playoffs now with the NBA Finals. I feel like those first couple days off, the Celtics probably really appreciated. It wasn't too hard fought of a series. Pacers took them to five, but a lot of those games were very close, and they could have gone either way. But once you get, that third, fourth day off, you're getting antsy. You're getting ready to play. You've had your rest. You want to play now.
Yeah.
You don't want to sit around more than a week waiting. But even for the Mavericks, they had almost a week to get ready as well, as they were able to finish off the Timberwolves in 5 games. In Game 5, which was just a complete blowout, really surprised to see that. I thought maybe the Timberwolves could have even forced a Game 6, even taken it to a Game 7, but the Mavericks did a great job of finishing them off once they let the Timberwolves win Game 4 and they were up 3-0. But tonight we saw Kristaps Porzingis come back and he looked really good, getting to his mid-range spots, hitting a couple big threes, had a nice drive for a dunk as well. So he looks comfortable, and the Celtics won Game 1 pretty convincingly.
Not only a morale booster for the Boston Celtics getting Porzingis back, but a huge effect already, just blowing the Mavs out in Game 1, taking a 1-0 lead in the series, doing what they should do. This is okay for the Mavericks still if you pick the Mavericks to win the series like myself. All the Mavericks need to do is get one of these games in Boston, and they're in a great position and as they go back home to Dallas. But it looked really good by the Celtics tonight. Jason Tatum stepped up, too. People have questioned his presence in big moments throughout his career. He's trying to cement a legacy and cement that he is a big-time player in these big-time moments like an NBA Finals.
Yeah, and the Celtics, having made it in the finals just a couple years ago in 2022, they've been on this stage before. They certainly looked ready to come out and dominate today. And on the other side for the Mavericks, they just couldn't really put the ball in the hoop tonight. They really struggled to score. Kyrie really struggled in his return to Boston. You heard him getting booed like every time he checked back into the game. Luka didn't have the most efficient shooting night, but he was able to get the point output that he's used to. But the biggest question for them, it's been all season, and it's going to continue as these finals go on, is who can be that third and fourth scorer, who can assist him and Kyrie when they need a little boost, whether it's off the bench or from one of the big men, or even P.J. Washington or Derek Jones, just knocking down some open threes after Kyrie or Luka gets into the paint. So that's going to be, I think, the key factor as we get into this series, but Kyrie's also going to need to play better.
And I think the Derek Lively and Porzingis going against each other is something that you got to watch because Porzingis was great tonight, and Derek Lively's been an unbelievable player for the Mavericks so far in this postseason run for them. If not for him, I don't think they make it to the NBA Finals, to be honest. I think that he has meant that much to this team. I think he's the third guy, right behind Luka and Kyrie, and then it's Lively. What a great pickup by them as a rookie. He's had a huge impact. But the Celtics just got guys that perform as well. Al Horford is somebody, he's an older guy, but you look at him and he just finds a way in playoff games, it feels like, for them to just be efficient and get those rebounds, get those buckets, make defensive plays. And then you got a guy like Drew Holiday, who's a great defender as well, that they're going to be putting on Kyrie Irving, going to be putting on Luka Doncic at times. And it's going to be difficult for the Mavericks to deal with. But at the same time, this is a great series because you have superstars all around, especially in the backcourt with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and then matching up with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for the Celtics. I think that it's going to be a back-and-forth series. I still like the Mavs, even though this is a rough first game, getting blown out, but it is against, the best team in the NBA all season at home where they were virtually unbeatable this year. You look at them, they have a strong home court advantage. Let's see what Dallas can do in Game 2, and if they can get one or steal one in Boston, I'm going to like the way that they're setting up in the series for the rest of it.
Yeah, and the NBA is a really weird league. We see tons of blowouts all the time. The Clippers blow out the Mavs in Game 1, or at least in that first half. I think the Mavericks actually ended up making it pretty close, but the Clippers were able to hold on in Game 1 of that first-round series in the Western Conference. So it's a game of up and downs. There's been a lot of blowouts in the playoffs. I mean, you look at the Timberwolves got blown out a couple times by the Nuggets in that series, and they were still able to rally and win in 7. So I don't think you can overreact. This loss shouldn't be much different than whether they lose on a buzzer beater, especially in the NBA where it feels like the margin of victory sometimes is over exaggerated or overrated, as sometimes teams start to mail it in or they just don't quite have their full team ready to go. but in this case, I do think the Mavericks came out a little flat for having 5 or 6 days to rest, whatever it was. But like you mentioned, the Mavericks' goal coming in should have just been to win one out of the two in Boston, and that's still manageable as long as they can win the next one. I will say, before the series started, my prediction was Celtics in 6, so I'm gonna stay with that prediction. They looked pretty good tonight, but I guess we'll see over the course of the rest of the series. I thought this was gonna be, an NBA Finals that was gonna write the record books and be one to remember. That has not been the case so far. It's only one
Well,
game
it's
in.
only one game here. I don't think you can jump to that conclusion yet. This is game one. We've seen a lot of series. We've seen leads at 3-1 that haven't sustained. So the series can be tilted one way, and it can change very fast. We've learned that throughout watching the NBA in our lifetimes, and looking back at history as well. But it's a great start for the Celtics. They're up 1-0. They're going to look to take a 2-0 lead, which would be that would hurt. That's where you get in trouble. But at the same time, throughout this playoffs, you've seen teams have 2-0 leads, and then they get erased pretty easily, pretty fast. You go back to home, and everything changes. It feels like for a lot of teams. The Nuggets and the Timberwolves series is a great example of that. That series changed awfully fast. No one was winning at home. Then no one could win on the road, or no one was winning at home. Everyone else was winning on the road in that series. It was kind of weird. It was like a flip flop home court advantage, and the Nuggets ended up just pulling it out somehow to tie that series back up, and then it was the Timberwolves fighting for it. So you can fight back in a series all you want. A lot can happen. At the end of the day, you see the Pacers down 0-2 against the Knicks in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and they came back to win that series and go on to the Eastern Conference Finals. So a lot of examples of teams pulling themselves out of holes, and we're going to see what the Mavericks can do with that.
Yeah, and the other big news in the NBA as of
Oh.
really earlier today is
Yeah.
Dan Hurley and the Los Angeles Lakers.
Let's talk about this.
It was really interesting because nothing was really officially signed. It almost felt like you were already having headlines that he was going to LA and what it would look like, even though they were sort of just in contract talks in what I think would be an absolute steal for the Lakers, just in terms of getting somebody who's going to motivate everyone in the locker room. Although I don't know if he's really the answer, it feels like that would be a pretty good draw. But for Dan Hurley, in my opinion, he should definitely stay at UConn and not go to the Los Angeles Lakers. That is not where he wants to be, at least in my opinion.
This is what we have to look at when looking at Dan Hurley to the Lakers. Dan Hurley has been a phenomenal college basketball coach so far at UConn, and he's very young still, so he has a lot more that he could still do. He could become one of the most successful college basketball coaches of all time if he continues his run that he's got at UConn. I mean, he's won 2 national championships in a row, so what more could you ask for him at this point? This is the thing that a lot of college coaches are talking about. They're saying that right now with the NIL situation and now college athletes can be paid, it's almost becoming like they're professional athletes. And college coaches are begging 17, 18-year-old kids to come to their school, and then they can someone can transfer immediately, even for 1 year. It's not like what it was before, where a coach could build his program, have guys that are there for 3, 4 years all the time. The transfer portal and the new rules have changed that. NIL eligibility has changed that, and it's made things more like a professional sports league in college basketball, especially at the Division I level. So Dan Hurley, if he's not into that, and a lot of college coaches aren't, they're not into the bargaining kids and negotiating deals with attorneys and having sports agents for these college kids, like a lot of brand endorsement deals that you see that was more of a custom at the NBA level. It's something that some coaches probably don't want to be in the situation of. And if you're already there, then you could say, well, why not just go to the highest level? And the Laker job is one of the most prestigious jobs there is at a professional sports level. However, I look at what he's done at UConn as something special, and you want to be able to continue that. And the other thing that I think some people aren't mentioning is that, okay, yeah, LeBron was like, oh, I love the way Danny Hurley runs his offense. I love the way Danny Hurley coaches, and everyone's all in on Danny Hurley from the Lakers. Did you do all your research in that? Because he is a yeller. He is somebody that makes you go and practice 24/7. I don't know if he would change his attitude and approach if he was an NBA coach. But right now, the Danny Hurley that coaches at Connecticut would not work at the LA Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. LeBron James at 40 years old is not getting yelled and screamed like that, especially in practice or yet in games. He's just an intense guy, and I think it's easier to do that at the college level than it is in the NBA. It really hasn't worked in the NBA. These guys basically own the team more than the coaches do. They have more of a say. LeBron James has more of a say than almost any player in any sports league in history. He can make a snap decision, you're fired, and he's done that with his coaches before in the past. I think it could be a little bit dangerous and a little bit murky for Danny Hurley if he wanted to get into that. And I don't know if it'd be the best idea for the Lakers too, with just a guy who's super intense like he is.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. I think what's really attracting Danny Hurley, or what is so attractive about the Laker job, is just the bright lights of LA, being able to coach LeBron and Anthony Davis, possibly Bronny James. We'll see how all that shakes out. If he declares he stays in the draft, or if he hits the transfer portal, utilizes NIL in college. And also the contract that Hurley's going to get offered, it's going to be a huge one.
Yeah, he's going to get paid more.
And money really does talk to a lot of people in this world, especially, someone who, he's won the 2 national championships at UConn. He's established his brand name. They love him there. He could go make a lot more money coaching in Los Angeles, but I just don't think. 3 main reasons to me. First of all, the job security. The job security he has at UConn is probably for the rest of his life, unless things go terribly wrong. He violates some recruiting violations, or UConn is just absolutely awful. I think he's going to have that job as long as he wants it. You've seen how short of a leash these guys in the NBA have, especially in LA. I mean, Frank Vogel won an NBA championship, and 2 years later he's getting fired.
Right.
That's
what LeBron wanted him gone.
That's what LeBron wants to do to you. That's not just LeBron. That's what Kevin Durant wants to do to you. Steve Nash in Brooklyn. I think it was Frank Vogel again, or that was Monty Williams in Phoenix.
Who was a great coach, we thought.
Yeah, and now they have Frank Vogel. The guys in the NBA will do that to you. So that's the first reason is just the job security. The second reason is the play style. I know college and the NBA, they're becoming more similar, but they're still so different. There's so many more sets ran in college. It's so much more attention to detail. It's so much every detail matter. The game's shorter. Guys are grinding more. Every inch of the court is so heavily contested, where in the NBA, it's still a very physical game. When I think we need to give props to the NBA. It is a battle.
It's
it is
the
a grind
highest
every
level
night.
of basketball.
I think sometimes we just think of how skilled everyone is, and it's like, oh, they're not trying and stuff. That's not true.
They're trying.
They're trying. I mean, watch Derek Lively battle Kristaps Porzingis in the finals. They're going at it, but
even in the regular season too.
It's just not that same type of, every possession matters mindset that I think people have in the NBA. And the third thing is, like you mentioned before, just his coaching style. I mean, I'd like to compare him to Tom Thibodeau. They did a survey in the NBA of who would you least like to play for, and
I got a problem with this.
Tom Thibodeau was number 1. Tom Thibodeau is a great coach, but there's a reason.
Ask all the Knicks, though, Garrett.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's a reason he hasn't kept his job. He went from Chicago and then to Minnesota, and now he's in New York. Guys in the NBA don't want to play for a guy like that, and that's what Hurley is.
That's true, but this is where I counter with what I just said and what you just said. Tom Thibodeau is absolutely loved by all New York Knicks. Josh Hart loves him. Jalen Brunson, it loves him. He has said, I will not play for the Knicks if they fire Tom Thibodeau. He said that. So he's done a reverse of what LeBron has done, what KD has done, what these superstars have done that have demanded things. So guys like that can become loved by their teammates and by their players, but it's not exactly a quick and easy transition for Danny Hurley. But at the same time, Garrett, he'd get paid a lot more money for a lot easier of a job. He's not going from winning the national championship to the next day, all right, time to recruit for the class of 25, the class of 26. He's got to do that at the college level, and it's almost this never-ending 24/7, 365 cycle of just boom, boom, boom across the board of we still have work to do, even if you've won a national championship.
Yeah, and the problem just with someone's style like Thibodeau is he's kind of like the Draymond Green of players. If you're on Draymond's team, you love him. If you're on a different team, you hate him.
Why would someone hate Tom Thibodeau if you were on a different team?
Because there's guys who don't want to grind every day and who don't like his style of coaching because he's so defense oriented. So sometimes all it takes is one guy on the team to get on the wrong side of him, and then a buddy takes his side, and then that's where you form this stuff. I'm not disagreeing with you. I would
Yeah.
like to play for Tom Thibodeau. I think
Oh, you would love him.
I think he's an amazing coach, and I
Yeah.
think Danny Hurley is an amazing coach, and there's a reason that UConn's won 2 back-to-back national championships. But I'm just saying, not only kids nowadays, but professional athletes nowadays, they want a coach that they can manipulate. They want a coach that's played in the league recently, that they can talk strategy with, and that they're like, oh, I don't quite agree with you here. Let's go my way. And then if things don't get worked out, how about I'll just tell the GM to fire you?
And you know what I think this is also? Even broader, zooming out even more, Garrett, it's Adam Silver's NBA. It's not David Stern anymore, and that's a big difference. Under Stern, it was much different from top to bottom in the NBA, and Adam Silver has really just given so much power to the players that it's almost become unhealthy. They demand whatever, and whatever they demand, they get. It's something that's completely changed and flip flopped. You look at the comparison between the NBA and the NFL. Under under Adam Silver, the the NBA has become players control the organization. Look at the NFL. Franchise tag situations happen all the time where somebody is not happy, and then they still have to play for the team. The NFL, it's management that's controlling the players, and that's how a league really is supposed to be run. It gets silly sometimes when you have these stars like you mentioned, LeBron, KD, that are really just the ones. Boom, I want you fired. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's I think one of the biggest differences between the NBA and the NFL is the NBA. These guys just sign these huge contracts, and then maybe it's an injury, or maybe they just hold out, and they're getting paid to sit on the bench. Where it almost feels like in the NFL, whenever there's an issue, the running backs are demanding more pay. The rest of the league's like, well, you're not going to get it, and the running backs are like, I guess I got to suck it up and take less pay and keep playing. Where, as in the NBA, it feels like the players always win, which ends up just leading to bigger and bigger contracts and less authority for the GMs and the coaches in the league.
And let me give you a little bit of an example of what you could do in the NFL versus something that you just simply could not do in the NBA. Right now, CeeDee Lamb is not going to the mandatory camp that the Cowboys are holding for their OTAs in their offseason, and he's wanting a new contract extension. He's on the final year of his rookie deal. If I was running the Cowboys, but Jerry Jones won't do this because, he's operated differently in the past. Maybe he will change the way that he's done things. But in the past, he's caved in on people who have held out. Zeke being the latest example. Zach Martin being the latest example. But if really what you could do, theoretically, you could say, CD, I'm not paying you anything. You're still under our contract. And then I think CeeDee Lamb would still play at some point in the season because people see what happened to Le'Veon Bell with holding out, and it didn't work. And then the next year, he'd be I want to get out of here or whatever. Or I want a new contract extension. I go, no, we're going to franchise tag you. And so then that'd be 2 more years of somebody being on your team who would absolutely hate being there because you've treated them with total disrespect. And you're like, no, we're not paying you the money. You don't think you're worth this. If someone in the NBA thinks that they are worth this kind of money and they're not going to get it from their management, it's just not happening. That situation doesn't arise. And I don't think that's going to arise with the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb. I'm just saying that's a possibility and that you've seen it happen before with other players. And
Yeah.
you've seen it happen with Kirk Cousins in the franchise tag. You've seen it happen with, although he's made a lot of benefit with that. He's like one of the most rich quarterbacks in the league. And Dak Prescott was also franchise tag before getting his contract extension. And now it's another cycle of when do we extend him and do this. And I just know all this because I'm a Cowboys fan. I follow it closely. But there's a lot of situations in the NFL where you can hold on to a player for a lot longer than they'd like to be held on to.
Yeah, and I think it starts with just being stricter as a league from Roger Goodell really down as he's the commissioner. You see these fines going out every week. $10,000 fine, guy's socks was pulled up too high, or
Stupid.
$50,000 fine, he had the wrong cleat size on, or the wrong cleat color, or whatever it is. But I think that overall just helps to, sort of rein in the players. Where in the NBA, first of all, I think there needs to be some rule changes. Starting with a technical foul, it needs to be 2 shots instead of 1 shot. It would just, and second of all, they just need to give out more technical fouls. Anytime a player turns the refs with his hands up or he just starts talking to him, in my opinion, it should be a technical foul.
They let him chirp for so long in the NBA.
That's the problem you get is, every time Luka Doncic hits the ground, it feels like he's just palms up looking at the officials.
And same with Jason Tatum.
And if you could,
He's terrible at it.
if you fix this right away and you're strict about it and you say, okay, I'm going to tee you up for looking at me. Oh, I'm going to tee you up again. Oh, now you're out the next game. Then they're going to start cleaning up. Oh, now it's 2 shots instead of 1 shot. It's a little more valuable. Now technical for the other team. Just little stuff like that. It's going to clean up the whining. There's going to be whining in sports. There's going to be complaining, but we need to get it to the point where it's not after almost every play someone's looking at over at the official whining for a call.
Remember the Knicks Sixers series? Oh my gosh, it was every time.
It's we love to rip on the refs, and yeah, they miss a lot of calls, but their job is so hard, and especially when guys are trying to draw fouls and guys are trying to dodge their way into and out of fouls, it makes it even harder.
Especially a sport where there's contact and it can be called for a foul almost every time. It's ticky-tack stuff.
I think it starts with being sort of just stricter from the top down as well, and saying the rules not only on the court but off the court are going to be laid out for you, and you're going to follow them.
Garrett, I don't know if you ever feel this way, but I feel like sometimes Adam Silver's almost trying to be friends with the players. He's trying to buddy up to them. I'm like, Adam, you're not the head of the Players Association. That's why they have that in place, to fight for the players, to speak for the players. You're the commissioner of the NBA, the National Basketball Association. You're supposed to be the one that lays down the rules. You're supposed to be one that helps out management, that helps out the league and helps out the teams and helps out ownership. I just think that's something that he hasn't done that well, and it's resulted in this. Players have more control than the general manager, which just isn't right in sports, and it resulted in just players like KD saying, "Oh, I'm going to the Golden State. We're building a super team. We're going to do this." And then I know you were the beneficiary of that, but they didn't even need it. It was just like this excessive amount of force used by the players that, you saw it in Brooklyn. It doesn't always happen. James Harden, I'm going to Brooklyn. Kyrie, I'm going to Brooklyn. Kevin Durant, you guys are all coming with me. We're all playing together. Steve Nash, it didn't work. It was a disaster. It was a dumpster fire. That's some of the effect that this can have.
Yeah, and hopefully we're moving away from the super team era as teams like Minnesota, Oklahoma City start to be Indiana,
yep.
The smaller markets start to become more competitive. It's really just better for the game, but I think it's time we can transition into a league that's run even a little bit differently with no salary cap, where the smaller market teams don't have as much of a chance as the bigger markets. This is more a problem with the owners than the players in the MLB. The players in the MLB, for the most part, are they're not going to complain a lot. The money in the MLB nowadays is pretty good. It's not as good as the NBA, but guys like Ohtani are still getting their big contracts. But the main problem they have is just the owners aren't willing to give up their money. And sorry to say, but there's owners in the league who care more about their financial status than their team's record.
And that's very apparent with how much money they spend for their payroll. The other thing that I want to talk about, Garrett, with the MLB, because we kind of touched on this last time about the salary cap, and there should be one on our latest episode. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But you look at the top teams right now, and in my mind, I think it's pretty clear who are the top teams that are actually being to deal with. Because I think right now there's only 11 teams that are above 500. It's been bad baseball, honestly, for most of the league, and there's only 11 teams above 500. That's not very good for a sport, but I look at the status of the league as the Yankees, the Phillies, the Orioles, and the Dodgers being really the 4 teams this year that have to be taken truly seriously, the 4 best teams in the MLB. I know the Guardians have been good. I know the Royals have been unexpectedly good. The Brewers have been good. But those 4 teams, I think, they're different. I think they're much different than those teams. And there's obviously a first tier and there's a second tier. And I think there's pretty much of a big gap between the first and second tier teams. And those first tier teams are the real teams that I see right now that I think will be in the October Classic. But the other thing you got to point out is, the Braves could get better. I know Acuna's down and he's hurt, which is unfortunate for them. But they're still a good team. The Rangers could go on a run, and when they get healthy and they get their pitching back. But
never count the Astros out.
The Astros could still, they've gone to how many straight ALCSs at this point? I think 6.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I just think that those right now are the 4 top teams in the NBA, or in the MLB.
Yeah, and when you look at sort of the top of the MLB, I think what's really the separator in a league that's dominated by a lot of the time, big market teams, is the player development and the front offices and general management of the smaller market teams. As Michael takes a little sip of water, deep breath there. But as I was saying, you look at the Yankees, the Phillies, and the Dodgers, they don't really have to develop their players as well because of all the money they can spend. I think the reason the Guardians and the Orioles and now, sort of the Royals are making their push and even the Brewers is because they're really well coached teams. All of those managers know what they're doing. They have very good player development throughout their minor league systems, and their general managers can draft well and seek out talent, and then they send them to the player development to get those guys ready for the major leagues. The Orioles have been calling up
And they've
so
spent
many
money.
guys this year.
Even the Orioles have spent money. They got Corbin Burns. They got an ace. That's the first time they've spent money in a long time. The Yankees, they made a trade. They went out to get Soto. The Phillies, they've spent money all over the place. The Dodgers, they got Shohei Ohtani. They got Yamamoto. They have Freddie Freeman. They have stars everywhere, and these teams have actually spent money to help out their squad.
Yeah, I just think there's such a pressure with the small market teams to get it right in every asset of the non-money spending team. You got to nail it in the draft. You got to have a good coach, manager, whatever you want to call it. You got to have a good front office, whereas there's so much more room for error. Is Dave Roberts really that good of a manager? We don't really know because the Dodgers are loaded with talent every year. A lot of people might say no because the only World Series they have is the COVID one, which some people aren't going to count. I mean, I'm going to count it.
It was like half a season.
It counts in my book. I'm not going to say, oh, it was a Mickey Mouse ring.
But do you count the NBA bubble championship as much of a championship as the other ones? No, in my eyes I go, it's just a little bit less.
I'm going to give it the same recognition, but my
it's
point
the same
is
recognition at the end of the day, but I don't think it's the same pedigree as the other ones.
It's just that's the major problem that MLB has is just the bigger market teams. There's just so much more room for error. They don't have to have the best manager or the coach. They don't have to draft the best because they have so much money spending power. And I mean, you can mess it up like the Mets did.
Yeah,
it is possible to mess up.
Oh, that'd be betting. You'd be betting.
But when you have teams like the Yankees, Dodgers, and Phillies who do get it right, that's why those three teams have three of the best 5 or 6 records in the league.
Yeah, and I think it's been crazy to watch Aaron Judge just come out of an April slump that was horrible for him, especially to his standards or anyone's standards. Especially thinking of Aaron Judge, guy who's hit 62 home runs in a season. He and Juan Soto are clicking, and I think it's to the delight of Yankee fans that they couldn't even imagine it would be this good. And I don't think anybody could really see it in their eyes of, wow, this is just how it looks when you have two of the best, if not the two best players in Major League Baseball going 2 and 3 in a lineup. And I really think they are the two best players in Major League Baseball, at least hitting wise. When you just look at pure hitters, it's something that has been a joy to watch. And it's crazy that the Orioles are only 4 games back after the Yankees having an excellent start, being 45 and 19. It's the AL East that's going to be close, and I think that it's going to be fun with some Yankee-Oriole games coming down the stretch late in the season.
Yeah, and that's I guess the positive feedback of Ohtani, Betts, Soto, Judge, being on these huge market teams is that they're having a lot of success. So we're going to get to see them, in the postseason. Maybe we could even see them in the World Series possibly,
Right.
But it does feel like the big name players are having a pretty good start to the season. He's not pitching, but he's pretty much living up to that contract at the plate. You mentioned Soto and Judge, how good they're doing. Guys like Bryce Harper, Christian Yelich is having a bounce back year. Even guys in the Orioles are like Gunnar Henderson and Adley
Right.
Rutschman, who
Well,
are lesser known names now, but in a couple years they will probably become what they once were. And look at a guy like Jose Ramirez. He's a guy who's sort of fallen off a little bit off that cliff because the Guardians play in Cleveland and they haven't been talked about as much. But even he's getting back up there.
Look at Bobby Witt Jr. Look at Salvador Perez. Perez has been unbelievable for them at catcher, he's old, it feels like. And
feels like every year he just gets better and better the older and older he gets.
He's great, and they've been a surprise too. So there's a lot of ups in baseball, but there's a lot of teams that are under 500. There's 19 teams under 500, or at least that was the other day. I think there's still only 11 teams above 500. So with 19 teams under 500, that's a little bit rough of a scene, but it's something that we'll be tracking all the way as we go into the dog days of summer, Garrett, with the NBA Finals wrapping up, and then the Stanley Cup Final wrapping up with.
Yeah, I don't have too much commentary about that. I just kind of find it funny that it's like a 7-hour plane ride from Florida to Edmonton.
Yes.
In between, and
Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers.
If that goes 7, it'd be I think 4 or maybe 5 flights. It'd be before and then after game 2, after game 4, 5 and 6. It'd be like if it went 7, it could be 6 flights home. They're I think 2,993 miles away or something insane. It's like the northwest of Canada versus the southeast of
Yeah.
America, which I kind of just find pretty funny. But a Canadian team hasn't won the Stanley Cup in a while.
And I don't think they're gonna. I think I got Florida in 5. Florida's a team that's their second time to the Stanley Cup final, the second year in a row. And it's disappointing for the Rangers that they weren't able to get to the Stanley Cup final. But at the end of the day, you look at this Florida Panther team; they're very good. It's not like you lost to a scrub. You got bounced in the first round by the New Jersey Devils like you did last year if you're the Rangers. You lost to a team that's great, but the Rangers also won the President's Trophy in the regular season, and they had the stars throughout their team. They have the best goalie in the NHL with Igor Shesterkin. So when I look at the Rangers, it's a little disappointing, especially when you lose to Florida again, or you keep losing to Floridian teams. You've lost to the Lightning in the Eastern Conference Final 2 years ago before this. So the Rangers are right there, though. They're close, and I think they're the second best team in the NHL. I think if they weren't in the same division as Florida, they would be in the Stanley Cup final as well. But I think Florida's the best team in the NHL this year, and even with Connor McDavid on the Oilers, Panthers in 5.
Yeah, I'm going Oilers in 6.
All right.
I think
Well,
this is the time that Draisaitl.
we'll note it. 31-27. Garrett says Oilers in 6. Come back to it. We'll see what happens.
I think this is the year Draisaitl and McDavid finally, get their Stanley Cup together. It's an Oilers team they've had the offensive firepower for years now. They just haven't quite put it together in goal and on the defensive side, and it feels like they've done that enough this year to the point where they're going to be overpowering. But it's kind of two contrasting play styles. You watch the Stars in the Oilers series. There's a lot more goals than the Rangers and Panthers. Yes. Rangers and Panthers constantly 2-1 games, 3-2 games, 1-0 games, and out west they can score the puck pretty good. So it'll be a good series.
Yeah, I think it should be fun. But then after that, it's just baseball, and that's what we'll be getting into. Also, stay tuned for a little bit more from us, maybe an interview or two in the summertime that we are always happy to do and look forward to, especially working with FingerLakes1.com.
Yes, for sure. And we can't fail to mention the sponsor of this video, Molly V's fabulous homemade ice cream, whether they're on the road or in the storefront in downtown Victor, delighting your taste buds with just many unbelievable flavors.
We got to open up an episode next time with Molly V's as the sponsor, and maybe we'll give it a name. We'll say like, this is Molly's. What do we want to say? Molly's makes takes. I don't know. Molly's takes. But Molly V's, go visit them if you haven't already. If you've listened to us, you know how much we love Molly V's. So thank you, Molly V's, for continuing to partner with us, CR Sports, for countless episodes and for the future ongoing episodes that we have coming soon to you. So thanks for listening today, everybody. That's going to do it for our latest episode, and stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram at CR Sports, and stay tuned for a little bit more information that we might have coming your way. Thanks, everyone.